Did you guys ever see that ad that Eric did for us that they put on like VH1 and MTV?
A chaotic blend of Murder City mayhem.
It's got like that classic ad voice, that dude with the super deep voice. And they're like, for fans of Deicide and Oceano. And I'm like,
Oh my
I don't think
God.
any fans of Deicide are listening to Oceano, but I'm fans of both of those bands. But again, like you were saying, that type of fan was just starting, right? I mean, the fan of death metal and hardcore and the fan of blending them, right? It was new, right? It wasn't like it is now.
Real quick before we start, I just wanted to mention that we do these podcast recordings live on Twitch. It's kind of a cool way for you guys to be a part of the conversation, as well as see the behind the scenes and the uncut versions of these episodes. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribing, leaving a comment, liking the video, all that stuff goes a long way. Same goes for leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We have a striving community on Discord if you want to chat with other like-minded deathcore enjoyers, as well as just staying up to date with everything that's going on with the podcast. Last but not least, if you want to support the podcast, I'll be leaving a link down in the description wherever you are watching or listening on how you can do so, as well as links to everything else that I just talked about. With that out of the way, enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Brutality Podcast. My name is Dom, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Yan. And this week, we have the pleasure of having Patrick from Antel followed with us today. Pat, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. I'm glad you decided to do this despite already having talked, gotten your ear talked off by Yan for when he was doing his video. So we appreciate you coming for more.
It requires a lot of patience, and you did it. So that's great.
Yeah, it definitely took longer than I thought it would, but it was worth it. So
yeah, it's because the amount of things that I need, like you're gonna take that amount of notes and you're gonna use like that, right? So it's like you need as much as you can, and I don't want to do this and then constantly being like, hey, can you send me that? So it takes a long time, but I'm super happy with how like with our final result and all that. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault. It was my fault for talking so much. So
definitely.
You can't say that in front of Yan. No. Yan's definitely a culprit in the talking department. That's for sure.
I can promise you that I'm part of that. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm mostly to blame. But to be fair, I had a great time hanging out and talking. You know how much I love and Hell Followed and everything you guys did. So it was. I just had a blast the whole time. Yan the Yapper. Yeah, someone in the chat said that. That should be my name actually. That should be my channel. Yan the Yapper. It would make sense. So yeah. So thanks for being here.
Of course.
Yeah, man. Let's hop right into it, man. I'd love to, like we were talking a little bit before today, about what we'd be talking about today, and I think there's just so much to discuss, I think, in the world just of In Hell Followed With, because the band's, obviously wasn't around for a few years, but I mean, it's safe to say for Yan and I, Proprioception, I love Domain as well, but Proprioception for me was like we said it before the show, a top 10 deathcore album for sure. Definitely one of those albums that came at a great time for, when deathcore had kind of matured, and we were talking about it again before, how it's an album that holds up so well today. There's a lot of deathcore tropes, quote unquote, the gang chants, the hardcore elements, the build-ups to breakdowns, all these things that are so intrinsically like old school deathcore per se, but it doesn't feel cheap today. It still sounds modern. It was done in a tasteful way. I think you guys were right on the cusp of that kind of wave of kind of more techie, melodic, but well produced deathcore in those years. So I'd love to maybe kind of start there, like how was it for you guys? You guys did that one with at Dreadcore, right?
with Josh Wickman, yeah.
With Josh, yeah. How was that? Because he was a friend of yours, right? Like, is he in the same area that you guys are?
Pretty much. I mean, from where I live, it's probably about 45 minutes, and then pretty much anything in Metro Detroit is about 45 minutes from, whatever. But before we did the album with him, we actually did our 2 demos with him. So like the demo version of Dead World and the demo version of This Night is the Coroner's. We put those up on MySpace, and then we got signed to Earache after those demos. So naturally, we were like, we should probably just go back to Josh.
Right. And, like there was a winning formula there that was kind of proven.
Right.
It got you guys picked up and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So don't fix it if it isn't broken, right? So
right. Well, I mean, a lot of people do. So maybe sometimes to try something different, or maybe you could have even said, we could go to like a bigger studio or something like that because you've got maybe label backing now or whatever. Want to be taken more seriously or anything like that. But his productions were great though. Like I was saying, that album holds up so well today, right?
Agreed. I think we only spent like $5,000 to record Proprio, so it's pretty good.
That's recording and mix master.
Yeah, Josh did all of it. Yeah.
He's still doing stuff now, right? He put out the recent. I think he's done a few for Within the Ruins at this point, but he did the recent Within the Ruins, which sounds fucking insane. It sounds really, really good. But that guy's been around for like so long, doing kind of like he's gotten into a lot of different genres now. If you look at his work that he does kind of like more recent, but he was like the deathcore dude back then, like it was kind of like a go-to for a lot of deathcore bands back then.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like the Midwest and the East Coast is concerned, I would agree with you for sure. I don't think he ever got like the full recognition that he deserves or got maybe the clientele base that he should have gotten, but I know he did King at one point.
Yeah.
Before Schroeder took over, but now it's the other Josh Schroeder who's kind of blowing up, right? Has been blowing up, so he's
another one that was there like
either.
Early and doing a lot of deathcore, and now is like fucking all over the place, right?
Right, yeah.
Nah, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. You talk about some of that scene kind of from like the Midwest and all that. Like I was going through some of yours, on Wayback Machine, going through some of the MySpace stuff, and you guys were pretty tapped into a lot of like what I considered to be like some of the really cool bands from that kind of era that were like lesser known. I'm assuming these guys were local to you guys, like Once We Were Buried, and like you guys were fucking with like Yellow Sign, like 80,000 Dead, and Dissever the Tyrant, and like stuff like that. I just found it cool going through like the MySpace and be like, oh, these are all such good bands,
Yeah, you name dropped 80,000 Dead. That's impressive.
From back when it was spelt out with numbers before they changed it to the letter format. Yeah.
They were like the one true, like, I don't know what you would call them, like grind, I guess, but super heavy grind from around here. So
those were from your area, right?
Yeah, we got pretty lucky, I'd say, Michigan in that whole MySpace era right there, like 2007 to 2012. We got really lucky with talent that came out of here. It wasn't there wasn't a lack of it, that's for sure. And then a lot of those bands have spun off into other versions of themselves, and Once We Were Buried turned into Sentinel, which was really good. I believe at one point they were talking to Century Media, and then that just fizzled out. But the Boreworm, that's Michael from Yellow Sign,
Yellow Sign,
and Nate's in it now, or has been for a while, but yeah, man, there's a lot of talent, and really a lot of it untapped too. For the Fallen Dreams was big, and probably, the biggest one from our area is probably just Black Dahlia, obviously, but they were already blown up in like 2003, so
It was crazy to follow because I loved For the Fallen Dreams a lot, and the constant like lead vocalist like Chad, and then it's Dylan, and then it's Chad, and then it's Dylan. I was just like, what the like who's? I liked both, if I'm honest with you. Like they're just different, but I've noticed every time it was Chad, it was heavier, and every time it was like Dylan, it was a little more, you know, on the
melodic or whatever.
Melodic and singy. But I just want to plug something. Do you guys remember when Chad did Legend? How sick it was.
Oh yeah, that's a dude from Acacia Stream, isn't it? Right?
But Legend is still doing stuff. It's
oh my God,
LGND now. It's like a kind of like an offshoot of it, but like, and it's heavy as balls, dude. It's
dude,
really
I need to listen to that. I thought it was over. I didn't know they were.
So it's Chad, but he gets different people to write songs with him. So he did one with the guy from the Acacia Strain, which I think is my favorite song that they've done. But he's like collaborated with different like songwriters to do different stuff. So it's all kind of different, but it's just cool to hear Chad on recording still, you know.
Dude, because he's a great vocalist. You know, he's awesome.
I haven't talked to Chad in a long time, but we were always good buds back in the day, so I hope he's doing good.
I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, there was like this picture, it was Dylan facing him back then. It was like super on Tumblr and it was going around because like there was so many rumors and stuff, you know, like, oh my God, they're fight. I remember like I was a kid, but I was like, oh my God, like did they fight or something?
The height of the beefs, you know, between band members and bands with a bunch of different members, and Life Runner US versus Canada, and you know, all these things.
Right, yeah.
We don't have as much of that kind of drama anymore, I feel like.
It was blown out of proportion every single time. You know, like you would ask the people in the band, and they would be like, "Well, no, we never did that and that." But it was just like speculation online and whatever. But For the Fallen Dreams was huge for a while. You know, like I do remember they went a little more melodic and singy for a while with Dylan, and they had like huge views and stuff. They kind of blew up for a while, but no, it was cool.
They kind of went down that Misery Signals road for a little bit, yeah.
How was the scene back then? Because you talk about like a bunch of great bands and stuff, but were the local shows any good? Like were there a lot of kids coming out to shows and stuff like that, or like
it was huge,
how was it playing locally? Yeah,
it was. Michigan is so broad; it's like really spread out that in a weekend you could play Grand Rapids. Or you could be, and then next day be in Detroit, and then the next day be up north in Mount Pleasant or Saginaw, you know, and get different crowds in each city. So I would say on average in Detroit, I mean, when we were playing like the packages that were coming through, we played we were already a touring band at this point, but Molotov came through with American Me. We played that show in Southgate, and there's probably like 500 kids, something like that. And like a venue that probably shouldn't have had 500 kids, you know. So but it was good, man. Even when it was just the locals like us, Yellow Sign, and Once We Were Buried, before we all kind of started doing like regional shows and stuff, probably like 250 to 300 per show. It was really good. But we did really well like promoting each other, you know. It wasn't it was still a time for like flyers, and every flyer that was on MySpace was a real paper flyer in the real world, you know, and floating around the venues and whatever you could do to get it going, you know. Yeah, there was a lot more work involved back in the days than now. Obviously, you can just create content and put it on TikTok or whatever platform and kind of get a following that way, you know. So, which is good. Don't get me wrong; it's just different. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, even promoting individual shows, like it's through like, you know, Facebook ads and like Instagram ads and stuff like that. It's just a different way now, I guess, of getting the word out. What's crazy to me is like the old school way would still also work, you know, like handing out flyers at shows and stuff, and that just seems to be like an untapped kind of potential. Even if you're doing the Facebook ads, You know, like why not also hand out flyers? It would to me would just like, you know, double up your chances type of thing. But I
There's
don't
probably
know.
people
Definitely.
doing it. There's
There's still
probably
some people doing it, but it's not like that's not like the thing anymore. You know, like before then it was like the street teams and like all these things. You know, like and
It's
like,
it's somebody's dad doing it or something now. You know?
yeah. So someone who used to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
was just-
exactly. Yeah.
cool because like to me I saw it as a personal touch, right? Like sometimes for example, you don't know the band and you get to see them a little bit and they're like, hey, come at your show. Like there's you have a connection before even hearing what they're doing. So like it creates like I feel like it creates like maybe a more how do you call that, like a cold thing, you know what I mean? Like you're building an audience with them. They saw you, they have a connection. So
You're kind of setting the expectation, right? So that's the same with artwork, right? Artwork used to be super important. It's what like drew someone in, and that's why flyers were so important. You know, who did you have making the flyers, and it's just marketing in some sense, right? But is it going to grab the attention of the person before they even go to the show or listen to the band, right? So
exactly. But to be fair, you guys killed it artwork wise. You did one of the most memorable artwork ever.
I've got artwork from God Machine in the back purely
Same.
because of Proprioception. And dude, okay, we gotta talk about it too. Well, go for it. Go for it.
I've got probably like, I don't know, 8 God Machine posters that I still need to frame and put up, but
I finally framed mine, and it's like not. I didn't find a right frame for it. It's like the frame is bigger because he would cut them like these random fucking sizes, and getting like a custom frame would be like fucking $200. I'm like, I can't. So it's been sitting around up until this year, and I bought this like probably like 10, 12 years ago, like some stupid thing like that.
He does like weird like cardboard or like what's it called when you send someone a postcard, like postcard sized artwork and stuff, and it's super cool but unique in that way, right? But now I gotta spend, like you said, I gotta go on Etsy and find a fucking custom frame. So
Yep. Yeah, it's but we gotta talk about I mean his art that he did for Proprioception specifically. I think I thought I was going insane until I was doing some research this week, because I always remembered on God Machine's website he had like the full version, like the full layout. Like he did like a 3-panel thing with the girl that's kind of just laid out with the super long hair that goes like past her feet type of thing. I thought I had dreamt that artwork up because I couldn't find it anywhere online until I was on Wayback Machine and found the art on like it was a part of one of the like MySpace layouts, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Well,
it exists. But
if you got the digipack, the one that like folds out, it's in there too. So
well, that's what I assumed, right? That it was the interior booklet, but I don't personally own one, so I was like just trying to find somewhere where I could find that art again, because I just thought the art looked so fucking cool, you know. But
we had him do the 2022 album too. Which was like a different rendition of it. It was supposed to be like, I don't know, the future version of her or something like that, but it does look slightly different. You can tell his artwork style kind of like matured or like grew or something like that.
Yeah, well, it changed. I mean, there's so much time between the two, right? But yeah, it's definitely the less bold lines, more like fine detail type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When I'm curious, like how do you find God Machine? Like, because you say you have a bunch of his prints now and stuff like that. Like, what's the relationship?
I think it was the God, what's that band called? What's that band that has that song? Disrespect Your Surroundings or whatever. It's like the call.
A Day to Remember.
A Day to Remember.
Day to Remember. I think it was their album that he did.
Okay. I'm gonna look this up now.
I might be wrong, but it was a band like that that he did, where we were like blown away.
Artwork.
Yeah, I think so.
If he did that, I mean, that was huge. Hold on. Dude,
I'm looking stuff up.
It was a popular band.
Yeah. Either way, you found you saw art from another band that you fucked with, and
Yeah. Well, like I was saying earlier, like when you see that art, right, and you're like, whoa, I gotta listen to this, right? And unfortunately, I'd already listened to that band at the time, and I wasn't a huge fan, but it still like made me listen to the album, you know?
Right.
So
It got
immediately I
you.
was
It
like,
worked. Yeah.
yeah,
The proof was
exactly.
there.
So, any style of art like that, I think in God Machine is, if I'm wrong, if that wasn't him, then it's extremely similar to his style.
Hmm.
Um, definitely went down that road, and I think when we were shooting around ideas because we always had Mike from the Yellow Sign do our artwork. You know, he did a lot of
Hmm.
our T-shirts. He did the Domain album cover, and he was
Was
doing
he
work
was he doing like
for
MySpace
Sumerian.
layouts and stuff too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
layouts, and
yeah.
then he was working for Sumerian for a little bit.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's a guy who used to work at Earache. Can't remember his name, but it was back when we signed. He was only there for a few years. Ari, I think his name was, but
Okay.
I mean, he knew who God Machine was and instantly was on board as soon as we brought it up. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
You guys just brought the name to him and he's like, let's do this. Hell
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we spent, I think it was like $1,000 for Proprioception art, which was a lot in 2009, 2010 for artwork. You know, but
Right,
he,
but you've got like the cover, but then the insert as well.
right,
It's
yeah,
so it's like a 4 panel total.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, he's done a lot of bands.
Yeah.
So I mean, once I like went down that hole of God Machine's website, I mean, I'm seeing some Carnifex and
Hmm.
other bands who are using them, you know, and the artwork's just beyond impressive. So since then, obviously, I wouldn't say like we are in touch with each other or something, but the relationship is mutual. Like he likes working for us, and we like working with him, and it's easy to work with him. You know, we just kind of shoot I hate to say it, but like a generic idea at him, and he comes back with something, and then like a mock up, you know, and then before you know it, we're like, hey, try this, and that, and then he pumps out the piece, and that's that, you know.
Yeah, like a fully
So
fleshed idea out of not much, right? Like yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think he uses his wife for a lot of his artwork, so
Okay.
he's got a lot of really good influence as far as like the female, um, I don't know, design, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I love working with him, and I try to buy from him as often as I can, but he's pretty expensive. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
I,
I'm not that guy who's gonna be like, hey, give me a discount, you know?
no,
Yeah.
that's it.
Right? So
No, but
Yeah,
sorry, them.
no, go for it.
I was just about to say, I think it's still pretty cool that you guys understood very early on the importance of these things. You know what I mean? It would have been easy to
yeah,
be like, well, it's expensive. Let's just, do something else. And I think it's clearly, if you look at proprioception, the artwork is still, the music is amazing, but I mean, like, the artwork is still part of the success of
yeah,
that album. Definitely, like, it's
I
memorable.
agree.
It piques the interest. It's sick. It's like everything worked because there is hell in the name, the image, like, it's just like everything worked like
It's
perfectly.
almost
So
it's almost more impressive, I think, the artwork than the music, you know. But
well, that would be a
together,
huge debate, but I get what you mean. I get what you
yeah,
mean, but like, it's not. I can definitely tell you that not everybody understood that, the importance
yeah,
of an artwork. Like, there's proofs online that no, there's not
Yeah, there's a
not
lot of proof,
everybody
yeah.
yeah, that not everyone understood that. So for you guys to have like the perspective of like, I think it's worth it. I think it's really important because it is important. You look at anything on my walls, it's memorable. The one we remember
right,
is, you have the image in your brain. You talk about the album, first thing you're gonna have like the image. So
right,
it's an
yeah,
important part. It's definitely important. Like, I don't think it's a good decision to be like, oh no, let's just,
yeah.
it's whatever. So
Yeah,
But
but I think
speaking on
no,
that,
go for it.
what did you think of the artwork for the new EP?
well, it's
It's
sick.
I love the kind of two-tone.
Yeah.
It's not just two colors, but like that kind of like flashy like contrast and like the red versus like the black gray stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, it's super cool. I think you guys are able to do a lot of graphical work with it too. Like the way you kind of use it. There's like stuff that's framed out in like in the black portions of some stuff zoomed in. I don't know. I think it was like, because you look at like your Instagram page and like everything kind of fits, right? And it's all kind of like pieces of the art.
I thought it was kind of a mature take on it. I don't know how to explain it. Like it felt like a follow-up artwork type thing. You know what I mean? Like if you look at it, it's just like it feels more. The other one is amazing. I feel like the other one still works, but it's just I don't know. It just felt like the proper.
Everything
sequel.
I do or have done, I guess, I try to make it part of the brand, right? I won't lie, I'm super bad at socials. I've got a whole life, I've got kids, I've got the home, the fiance, the super serious job, music kind of takes a back seat for me now, but I'll never stop writing music, and I'll never like stop trying to create that brand, right? So anytime I do something, I have to make sure that it's on par, or at least going in the same direction, and using influence from the last album or using influence from the last artwork. And we're super blessed to be able to work with Hollowed Records and get the assistance we need to do things like get the Instagram page up to par and utilizing what we've created to create that online presence. And pretty lucky, PJ especially he's not like our manager, but he's basically our manager, you know what I mean? So shout out to PJ.
They do some social stuff, but they do some video work too, recording stuff as well, right?
They do all kinds of stuff. I mean, they're pretty fantastic guys.
I'd love to kind of tap into that actually, because you mentioned just there, like, trying to take from what came before it type thing. And what I remember from first talking to you, I remember you sending me a couple demo songs before the band was coming back, right? And I think the only question you really had was, do you feel like this sounds like And Hell Followed With, right?
I mean, it's something to worry about for me, especially when I don't think I ever really intended in 2018 to be like, I'm bringing Hell Followed With back. This is what I'm doing. I just started playing music more consistently and learned how to record myself at home, and the learning curve was very steep. If you listen to Chimerical Reality, from there to the 2022 album, you'll hear the difference, right, in tracking quality and even songwriting. Because when you're not just focused on songwriting, you're focused on recording, you're focused on everything else.
Right.
You kind of lose track of what you're doing. So, I feel like Chimerical was more like a terror to domain, whereas Quietus was closer to Proprioception, right? More on the death metal focus instead of like the metalcore,
It's faster. It's got a lot of that melody as well, kind of more like shreddy solos and stuff like that. I think there's
for sure.
I agree with what you're saying. And I think like clearly there was the conscious decision also of having like the female character come back in the artwork, right? Like immediately just from seeing the art, you kind of set the expectation of like this is kind of like a spiritual like successor to a Proprioception, or at least that's how I kind of
for sure
felt it.
I felt like Chimerical wasn't close enough. It wasn't true to like my personal style, even though I wrote the whole thing, but aside from vocals and lyrics and some of the solos and stuff, obviously, but I don't know. Those songs weren't written thinking of bringing back and Hell Followed With, right? Those songs were just me writing music, and it kind of fell into the same timeline of, oh yeah, I'm gonna bring the brand back, So um, when after that, when I was fully in to bringing Hell Followed With back, like in 2020, that's when we started writing Quietus, and that's when I was like, okay, well, obviously I need to make this more resemble more of the proprioception sound and direction, and while still trying to mature and not just ripping myself off from 2010. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and you've changed. Everyone's changes as people too, right? Like it's not like you're the same person as when you wrote that album, and so
it's also a balancing bringing new members in. Obviously, when I first brought everything back, I asked Nick, I asked Kyle, if they wanted to do it with me, and they both turned me down. But I was kind of already in the middle of it, and I didn't want to just stop. So I also didn't. I don't know. I didn't expect Hell Followed With to kind of have the pool that it does, at least in the cult MySpace way that it does. So
you thought you're just gonna put out some songs for fun type of thing. Like it wasn't anything further than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then when people are like, "This doesn't sound like an Hell Followed With," I'm like,
okay.
I don't know. I think it kind of does. I don't know. I know it doesn't sound like Proprioception, but it's definitely riffs that I wrote, and to their to validate the fans, obviously, if it's that important to them, it has to be that important to me. So that's why I kind of went back down that road, and tried to, at least. I don't know if
is that some of the feedback you were getting from Chimerical Reality? Like, is a reason why you tried to kind of pivot afterwards?
Oh, they're like this.
Pivot, like it's we're talking about like as though it was like these astronomically huge differences in sound. But I told you I thought it still sounded like an Hell Followed With. That was my response to your question initially when you sent me some demos. So to me, it wasn't like obviously it was going to be somewhat different. Like there's 7 years in between, right? But it's not with the same members anymore, and it's going to be a different thing, right? But I never felt like it wasn't. Like I don't know. You see a lot way more egregious examples of bands coming back that have totally different sounds, and you kind of wonder why they didn't just change the name, right? Where I never felt that way personally for Hell Followed With,
Yeah, we get that still now on like the YouTube, where people say that we should change the name and stuff. I obviously, like I said, I'm terrible at socials. I don't take social media serious when it comes to my music, and I don't take people's opinions like that to heart. Although I do consider them when I'm creating something that I want them to listen to. But at the same time, like I'm not going to release something that I don't want to listen to. So
right.
Yeah, but I feel like when you do such like like a big album, like kind of a cult album type thing, it's a blessing and it's a curse at the same time for any bands. It's the same thing with Joe for Cowboy and the Doom EP.
Right. It wasn't cult until like 2017, 2018, right? At least I never. When we released it, it did not get the love that it gets now. I mean, the reviews that did come out for it were very, very poor.
That's insane.
But it's such but that was a different era. We go back to these old like reviews and stuff from back in the day. It wasn't like independent people really doing like most of these reviews. It was all kind of like big box, big, so they didn't get deathcore. Deathcore wasn't still in 2010 really respected all that much. So it was like you go back and you look at reviews. I always mention this, but you go back and look at reviews of The Cleansing, and it's like shit on. It's
terrible
like a 4 out of 10. I'm like, dude, one of the most iconic albums in the genre. Like no one would say that today, but back then, people didn't take to it. So it's just weird because the people that enjoyed the album were still there, right? Like the cult following that exists now were people that listened to it back in the day. It's just those weren't the people reviewing it, right? It wasn't like
at the same time, a lot of those people that listen to it now, right, were like 12, right? How are they going to buy my album when they're 12, right? So, or even younger. I mean, there's fans
it was a
now that
weird
are,
time.
you know,
It was a weird time for buying music. I'll be straight up. There's no shot in hell I didn't download that shit for free. I'll be honest.
I never saw a penny from Earache, so I don't feel bad.
Right.
I remember having the physical
thing, but
I had the physical copy. I remember that much. Don't have it anymore, fortunately. But Dom is right. You know, like most people were, you know, it was the beginning of downloading everywhere. But it's mind blowing to me how I'm just gonna say it because I'm doing videos on the MySpace era. I see it all the time, and all the reviews are off, and I've never barely see any reviews that I was like, oh yeah, on point. It's crazy how these people were unqualified, and I'm still I don't care if it's a hot take or not, but they were just like death metal heads not understanding what deathcore was. So why the hell are you reviewing it? It's like me reviewing horror movies, and I hate horror movies, and I'm like, that's bad because it's an horror movie. All the reviews were just like trashing deathcore. Not even the album or what you did. Oh, it's still a bunch of breakdowns and hardcore. But like to look at Proprioception really and really think that the melodies, the way it's built and everything, like you're saying it's trash, like you shouldn't review music to me. Like that's my opinion.
I agree.
So
yeah, unbiased reviews are few and far between, right? But did you guys ever see that? I think it's on YouTube still. The ad that Earache did for us that they put on like VH1 and MTV.
No, I gotta
It's
look
got
at
like
this.
it's got like that classic ad voice, you know, that dude with the super deep voice.
Okay.
Optimus Prime. You know what I mean?
They're like,
Yeah.
and they're like for fans of Deicide and Oceano, and I'm like,
Oh my
I don't
God.
think any fans of Deicide are listening to Oceano, but I'm fans of both of those bands. But again, like you were saying, that type of fan was just starting, right? I mean, the fan of deathcore or death metal and hardcore, and the fan of blending them, right? It was new, right? It wasn't like it is now. Unfortunately, you know, music's been able to evolve into what it is, you know, blackened deathcore, symphonic deathcore. Really just all music at the end of the day, metal music, right? But
yeah, it was a big debate too. You know what I mean? Like it was very controversial back then to be a deathcore band. Like now, you say you're in a deathcore band. I'm not saying it's not, but it's just like a lot of people are just gonna be, oh, that's cool, you know. But back then, like for a lot of metal heads, they would be like, that's not metal. As you're not doing metal. You know what I mean? Like just trying to reject it because it's new, basically.
Well,
did you guys ever have like issues with like being in between? Because there's a fairly like there's a lot of hardcore elements, but fairly like tech-y, like fast as well. Like kind of. Did you guys always? I mean, yeah. There's no way you guys wouldn't fit in with the deathcore crowd, right? Like it would have always fit. Because some bands from that era were kind of like too death metal to be enjoyed by deathcore, and too deathcore to be enjoyed by death metal. You know, like that weird in between.
So in Michigan, we were pretty blessed, at least when we, you know, from when we started to when we finished. There was a lot of hardcore in Michigan, a lot. There was also a lot of death metal out of Detroit. So it was not uncommon for the two genres to mix on a bill. And then as soon as deathcore started touring, you know, like Whitechapel especially, I mean, those shows were huge, so it wasn't like uncommon to see a hardcore band on a Whitechapel show, right? Pretty lucky, I'd say in Michigan. Yeah. But we'd be in other states on tour and be on a completely hardcore bill and just get no reception. You know what I mean? So and likewise with death metal. So yeah, I mean, I'll say this, like if we got the pull that people think that we got, then we probably never would have stopped. You know what I mean? In the first place. So
It's crazy though, right? Because I feel earlier in the conversation we were talking about like social media nowadays, right? Like you guys, the only perspective that you had was those terrible reviews and all the album was doing. But if it would have been in those days, people would have been like your actual fans would have hyped it up like crazy, you know, like this album is actually incredible, and it would have been a different perception for you guys. So that's like that's something that I'm seeing a lot nowadays, you know. When I was 16, I was seeing all these bands, and in my mind, you know, they were like the biggest thing, and they knew. But most of these bands, truth is, they felt like we felt like we were not doing super well, you know. So it's a perception thing a lot.
I mean, for perspective, in 2020, we did like a short run with Beneath the Massacre. We played London, I think. And they're just popping out that new album, right? Anthony did drums on it. And they just bought like a new van and a trailer, and they're about to hit the road on, I think it was an Origin tour. And we're in Indiana, or no, we're in Iowa playing a show like when COVID's just hitting. And they're like, yeah, we got to go home. They're going to close the border. We're fucked. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you make these huge investments. It's a huge gamble. No, not everybody goes Lorna Shore, you know. And to speak to that, Lorna's been doing it for a long time too. And they've been relatively popular, but to say that they were ever as successful as they are now, I mean, and we still don't know. I mean, maybe it's paying their bills. I'm assuming it is if they're touring nonstop, you know. But there's something to say about like if we had just trudged through it, you know, a couple more years of everything kind of sucking, maybe we would have been in the same boat, you know. But again, there's no guarantee, and we were kind of at the head where we were like, it's just not financially feasible. Like, we had just gone to Europe, gotten into a bus crash. Like, we're now thousands and thousands of dollars in debt on top of the fact that we don't have money already, and our equipment is half broken, and I don't know, the drive just kind of dissipates eventually. And kind of lucky now though, where you can just record music and release it and not have to do anything. Social media just kind of takes it on a wave, you know.
It's always like easy from an outside perspective to be like, oh well, they should have, you know, do this and this or whatever. But like when you're in a situation with what a lot of people don't know, first of all, touring requires like it's not like you can put life on hold and you leave or whatever. You have things to figure out when you're not touring. You're working where? Do you have a job that's flexible? Or do you do all these things? And you know, when it needs to make sense. That's the part that people sometimes forget. It needs to make sense. Like if every time you go on tour, you come back, you're in debt. And even if the shows were incredible, even if it's amazing and everybody online is saying it's great, if it doesn't make sense at a certain point and you're trying to build something, you're getting into your, I don't know, in your 30s or whatever, and you're just like, you have opportunities, like, you know, it's easy to look at a band and be like, why? They should have, but you're not there. You don't know all the behind the scenes. You don't know how hard it is. So it's
like saying just don't eat for 30 days.
Yeah.
You can do it. You can do
that. but it's like I one of the last tours that you guys did, it was like the Arsonists Get All the Girls tour, right?
Mm-hmm. I was not on that tour.
You weren't on that tour? Okay. Because I
was like right in the middle of all the turmoil after Europe, and
it was after right after the crash, right? Not too long after the crash. Something.
Yeah. There was like 2 tours back to back. The short tours that ended up being like a long tour, or they were doing different legs of each tour or something like that. And by the end of that tour, obviously everybody else had then agreed. Yeah, we're just done. So I guess I kind of was ahead by one tour.
I just remember like And I mean, you weren't there, so but it was like I just remember like Ion Dissonance dropped off the tour not long after starting it, saying like it wasn't what they expected, and like merch companies sponsoring the tour like fucked everyone over or some shit like that. And I was like, I'm just thinking like bus crash, fucking like sponsors that don't pull up their deals. You know, there's just like it all adds up, right? There's just like.
I mean, I was at home hearing about everything as it was happening, and I was like, "That's it."
Yeah, I'm glad I sat this one out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the music industry in a nutshell, though, right? I mean, 99% of acts don't last, right? So, it's that 1% that everybody thinks, made it or did make it, and then everyone thinks that that's just the formula, right? So. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, my life's been good. It's been good, so I'm not mad about it.
Did you keep playing guitar afterwards? I mean, I'm curious. Like, were you like, oh, I quit music, or is like just fuck this band thing?
No, I've never stopped playing guitar. I don't play guitar as much as I did like when I was a kid, obviously, but especially right after the band, I was playing guitar every day. You know what I mean? So. Yeah. Still writing music, and when I was in Philadelphia at that point, as soon as I moved back to Michigan, I pretty much started right back up with Billy with another like local band, So, but that was just like strictly like melodic death metal. So
we can talk also about. You mentioned Billy. Like, I mean, if we talk about earlier, we're talking about talent with Lorna and everything, but Billy is a machine itself too, right? I mean, doing music with that person, basically, you had no limits, right? I think you even told me that, like, when you would write things, you just knew it would be absolutely insane with him, right?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just being able to write music with him. Like, we just had that chemistry as like friends, right? So it's weird now to not be friends with him, but if we were, we'd be writing music together, I'm sure. So
yeah, life is sometimes weird, but still, what you made back then is always going to be there, and it's absolutely incredible, right? So it's you definitely, it's just crazy to me because when we were talking about and how followed and what happened, I kind of always wondered what would have, what I mean, like if they just kept and everything,
it was the dark days of deathcore for the few years after that, though. So I think y'all bowed out at the right time.
That's true.
We would have suffered through a few more years, I think, where there wasn't much happening in the ways of deathcore being popular. Everything was down tempo for a minute.
And I'm glad in Hellfall it was never a gent, for that matter. So that's that's cool.
It's hard. It's hard not to add gent parts because they're so damn catchy. You know what I mean? But
let's get the shoulders moving.
Yeah,
get the shoulder
exactly.
workouts in.
I get it. No, but it's just I love we love talking about these things because again, when you're a fan and you don't know how these things work or whatever, like you're just like you think your favorite bands are like millionaires or something. Like I remember thinking that everybody had the biggest bus tour and it was like the life and like, you know what I mean, like rock 70s type of lifestyle, you know what I mean, like Guns N' Roses. Like I in my mind I was like, oh my god, Delph Maya, they're rich,
And then you hear about like Molotov Solution like opening up for like Chimera or some big ass fucking band like a Trivium or something, some shit like that, and they're being paid $100 a night, to play.
And then you realize that Chimera never made any real money either. And you're like, damn.
Yeah, that's it. So you're like, okay.
I'm always gonna remember also like I was a big like huge fan of Suffocate, and Ricky was doing like Q&As and whatnot, and it was after the band or whatever. But at one point he's like, I never made, like, people were asking like how much did you made with that, and he just said, I never made money with that.
Money.
Yeah, I never made like 1 cent. Like I was barely eating.
You go on
So
tour with
you guys toured with
$40
them,
in your pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
if you can
guys,
eat McDonald's, it's good, you know. Oh wow, we
Yeah.
can. That's great, you know. Sorry,
you
dumb,
guys toured
but-
with Suffocate a few times, right?
Once technically, but we did play other like random shows with them and stuff. So
Yeah.
Sick
that
band.
was like one of our first real tours. With the Domain lineup, actually, was with Suffocate. So
And I feel like your bands fit well together too. Like I know maybe Suffocate have like they're maybe a little more on the hardcore side. Maybe you have a little more melody and stuff like that. But I feel like those
Yeah.
bands together are freaking awesome. You know, like it makes sense.
Was Blind Witness on that too? Am I remembering that correctly?
no, that was the For the Fallen Dreams, Blind Witness, Sovereign
Strength.
Strength. Yep.
Yeah.
When you
That was a
toured
different tour. Yeah.
with For the Fallen Dream, was it with Chad or it was with Dylan?
Dylan. It was with Dylan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I've never toured with Chad. I've only played like one-offs with him.
Okay.
But yeah.
No, I was curious because once again, it's hard to know because it was changing a lot back in the days. You know, you look from an album to another, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, now it's Chad. So that's cool.
You guys
For
did
sure.
I was looking at some flyers, or you guys did like the Knights of the Abyss, Burning the Masses, Those Who Lie Beneath thing.
Shred White and Blue tour.
Dude, this is such a sick lineup, man.
That's
Do you have any
we were
favorite
all
lineups?
struggling so hard too.
Oh yeah.
That's probably my favorite tour for sure.
Yeah.
Just because we all became such good friends. I don't really talk to the Wretched guys anymore, but
Lots of weed, I assume.
oh my god, yeah.
The reaction speaks for itself. The reaction speaks for itself.
We'd get into different parts of the country, like what band is from what part of the country, and that's who would end
Who
up
has the
like getting the
connects,
weed, right? Yeah. But you get lucky as a band, and a lot of time people bring weed right to the show. So if we were expected to supply our own weed on tour, that probably was not going to happen. So we needed to buy McDonald's $1 burgers and stuff, you know. So
Back
Little
when it
sign
was
before the tip jar, you know.
Yeah.
We're looking for weed if anyone's got the hookup.
exactly. Yeah.
To be fair, with the inflation and everything, I don't know where bands are eating now because McDonald's, it's not the same anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
really
it's hard.
curious.
I mean, so when we did the 2019 tour, the Chimerical lineup, I was blown away at the like the guarantees we were getting. It's the most money I'd ever seen from a single show, right? Joey Lanzalito did a really good job with that tour, booking it and getting the guarantees that he did and stuff, and it made it enjoyable in that sense. Like we were able to get our hotels and eat when we could, and catering was pretty much provided every day. If tour had been like that back in the day, then yeah, we would have kept doing it for sure. But we kind of got treated like royalty in 2019 when we did that. So, but even then, like we're talking about like the cult following, right? Friend Hellfall with like even in 2019, like the pull on tour still really wasn't there. They were good shows. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like there was like 4,000 people showing up to a show or something, right? So. And that's kind of how everybody treats the name and the image of it. So I'm happy they do, don't get me wrong, but it's a very high standard to try to hold up to when you're just writing music in your basement and releasing it, right? So
No, for sure, but
for sure.
it's just wild because I'm sure, like, we ask anybody, maybe younger people don't know everything. That's the reason why I'm posting on my channel and everything. But you ask most of the deathcore community, and we're all on the same page with Proprioception and the impact of your band. Like, I've never heard once in my life someone being like, "Well, it wasn't like it never happened." Everybody's just like, "Yeah, it was incredible." You know what I mean? So it's crazy to think that for you guys, it wasn't. It took a long time basically before getting the recognition. It's
for
mind-blowing to me.
Well, I'm happy that it does, though.
Still
to be
amazing.
able to
Yeah.
be to be able to be an influence on somebody is all you can ask for, right? And in being a musician, so even if it's only to a couple thousand kids, that's enough for me. So
How has it been writing since coming back? I'm curious because obviously, like you started kind of writing solo, but with Quietus and the latest record, were you writing more in tandem with? Because now you kind of had like a live lineup and other people around you in the band and stuff. At that point, did you start writing collaboratively? Like how's it been with songwriting since then?
So Quietus, I wrote hand in hand with Daniel. We both kind of came to the table with our own material, and then he flew out to Michigan, and we recorded it together in one of my bedrooms.
Cool.
And so we were kind of ad libbing, as we were recording most of the tracks, influencing each other and kind of changing what we had written and adding to each other's music, and it worked out really well. And then with this latest EP, I had a kid right when we started writing this. So I wasn't really
Congrats.
available to write.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I wasn't really available to write. I was just kind of like recording little tidbits of riffs on my phone and kind of sending it to Daniel. And Daniel is one of the most talented musicians I've ever met, and he writes some pretty incredible music. And very, very blessed to have him, man. I know he acts like he's doing like we're doing him a favor by having him in the band, but he's made it hell fall with, in my opinion, taking our songwriting to the next level. So
Cool. Did you always kind of have like a second person you were writing with, guitar wise, and even from like back in the day?
yeah, it was always Kyle and I. It was
Yeah.
always Kyle and I, or Billy and I lived together, so we would write a lot of stuff together, and then we would send it to Kyle. Kyle would do his bits on it, and he wrote a lot of leads and whatnot on tracks that we wrote, and then he would send his stuff on Tablet and whatnot, and Billy would write his drums, and then I would add my tidbits, and it was a very cohesive writing style for Proprioception. If you listen to Domain, Kyle and I both wrote our own songs on that album.
Okay, you can tell like the differences.
Yeah. So there's like they're all pretty much the same. They're all metalcore, right? But Proprio was the first time Kyle and I really like wrote together with like a third person writing, which was Billy. So I think that's why the album it came out as well as it did, because we had a drummer actually fleshing stuff out and adding to it and adding his own versions of the guitar riffs and saying like, hey, chop this up, play this rhythm riff under this lead,
contributing to like the songwriting aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the actual songwriting, not just writing riffs, right?
Like structure and stuff.
Yeah, composition. Yeah.
Hey, we always love talking about influences, like personally, like because for sure the band you probably had like influences before, but for you as an artist, do you remember maybe if like who gave you the initial kind of like I'm gonna do music or something?
This is a super easy answer. If you asked me who got me into writing or to actually playing music, the style of music that I play and that I write is Black Dahlia Murder for sure, hands down, 100%.
Would have been my guess.
Murder.
Not surprising. Makes sense.
Everything from how I write and play drum riffs, and to single note progression riffs, to octave chord harmonies, everything. And most of my tattoos are all Black Dahlia influenced, and my entire personality and merch wardrobe for the longest time was just Black Dahlia Murder. So oddly enough, being from Michigan, I only met Trevor one time, and it was passively. We were outside of a show smoking a joint, and we didn't even really talk to each other. So the weird part about that, right? And I think this is how some kids maybe feel about proprioception, but like I felt like I knew Trevor and the band, just from listening to them from 2003 and when Unhollowed came out to even now with Brian and those guys putting out music. And
new record is great. It's fucking
absolutely
phenomenal. I'm so happy those guys are like back on track and still doing it, and with Brian on vocals and like killing it, right? Because that could have gone south, but I think he pays a really good tribute to what the sound was.
Yeah, Brian's the man, dude. I love that guy. I never met him, but I feel like I know them all just from listening and being influenced by them over the years, right? The decades.
The DVDs, that's what makes me
and
think
the DVDs,
I know them.
For sure.
I had that shit on repeat.
But I mean, before them, I grew up on classical music, classic rock, golden oldies. I grew up with my grandparents, and my first instrument was violin. So passively got into classical music just from learning it, playing it, and I mean, golden oldies and classic rock from riding in the van with my grandma to school, and then punk music from my cousin, NoFX, MXPX, thrash punk, stuff like that, Pennywise, and then of course into like Slayer and Metallica, and then kind of like weird heavy rock, I guess, like when I'm like 12 and stuff, I'm listening to like Limp Bizkit and Korn and stuff, right? Just naturally, I guess. I went through a big Limp Bizkit phase.
I still like it, if I'm honest, so I get it.
Yeah, same. Yeah. $3 bill y'all still gets spun every now and then. So, and then 2003, I mean, Unhollowed pops out, and I hear Funeral Thirst, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? But in like the opposite that you would think, I was addicted instantly, and the blast beats, I was like, what is... And instantly I went down that hole and started listening to Dissection, At the Gates, Deicide, Hate Eternal, Behemoth, anything that was death metal. Like I wanted to know it, and I wanted to learn it, and I wanted to replicate it. And then the hardcore influence, I think, just came from being in Michigan.
Yeah,
because
hardcore
my listening,
because
my listening taste, like the style of CDs that I was buying and shows I was going to was death metal and melodic death metal. It wasn't hardcore music per se. I wasn't listening to X Tyrant X on my own,
But Nick
but
was.
Eventually, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Nick was a unique guy. He is a unique guy, and he's super awesome, dude. But him and Kyle were the hardcore influence for sure. Nick more than Kyle, and I think our hardcore influence, our hardcore sound, comes from his vocals.
Absolutely, that's the way I've
in that
always
album,
kind of seen it. Like his kind of. The kind of shouty, like very like specifically like hardcore tone of vocals that he'll do that. He has the highs, he has the lows, but he's got the hardcore like vocal too, right? And I think that's a big part to me that kind of made you guys stand out, because that was like a style of vocal that no other deathcore band was really doing.
These high pitched too. Sorry, like I know we're talking about the hardcore. Maybe the high pitch sounds more, you know what I mean, like more deathcore, death metal, whatever. But like those are some of the best highs I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, I mean, seriously.
He was trying. He probably wouldn't agree to this, but he was trying to be Trevor for sure. We were all trying to be Black Dahlia, but we just didn't want to sound exactly like Black Dahlia, So.
I'm surprised Black Dahlia's never put out a breakdown in a song, like a proper breakdown. Not wishy-washy. We're kind of doing a mid-tempo thing, like a real break, because they were so associated with deathcore after a while. Like they would play with a bunch of, but look at you, right?
Yeah. True.
I mean, the music you made, but your biggest band was Black Dahlia Murder, and that it was the same for me, right? Like I think a lot of people like really fucked heavy with them, but we're deathcore kids,
I don't think we intentionally wrote deathcore though. Like proprioception, I don't. Yeah, it was intentional in the fact that we sat down and wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't think it was intentional to be deathcore or melodic deathcore or whatever you want to call proprioception. Um, that album just kind of happened, and that's probably why it is as in in people's opinions as good as it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here
Domain's
and
got a
toot my
similar
horn,
style
but
too, though.
yeah, Domain.
It's not like it's far out. It's the same kind of elements, the same
If
core
Domain's
foundation.
production value had been even half as good as Proprio, it would have done really well, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
we got pretty.
It's the vocal thing that was a bit.
Yeah, the pitch shift, yeah, and it was the drums. Our drummer was not prepared to record an album. He was not a click guy.
Mm-hmm.
We were a local band. I mean, at the end of the day, we were just a local band, right? He was not a click guy, and
Too
he didn't
early
grow
to
up
the
playing
game
to a
for
metronome.
program drums.
Yeah, way too early. Although, don't get me wrong, it was sort of programmed, but it was snippets of like his snare and his kick that were like placed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like we were dropping MIDI sections.
We can get him to do a
so,
blast beat for 5 seconds. Let's copy paste this to hell and back.
Right. I've thought about like re-recording some of the Domain stuff, but I won't do it without Nick.
Right.
So it would be super cool to do, but I would need Nick to do it, and unless he jumps on board with that, we're not going to do that. So
people still love that album, though. People were over the moon for the vinyl release that you guys did. I think even just stuff like that is always a cool way to
to speak to that. Like, we didn't do the vinyl release.
Oh, okay. What's up with that?
Nick did it with a guy who owns, I guess you would call it a record label, like a small record label in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of did it without our discretion, the rest of the band's discretion, which, I mean, I'm doing the band without them, I guess. So whatever, I can't like argue,
that was your karma back to them.
I mean, to be fair, I asked them, right? So,
okay.
And then we didn't see anything from those final sales. I know they sold for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2019, the guy who pressed the vinyls like came to the show in Detroit, was like, "Hey, you want to take these on tour?" And I was like, "Sure, man. Like, yeah, I'll take those vinyls of my music." Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I still have the vinyls. They don't.
He didn't sell them to you, at least.
No, I think that may have been what he was insinuating. But I don't think he necessarily did something wrong. Nick, was on board with it and gave him the okay. And and generally speaking, I'm sure he's a good guy, and I'm not going to speak ill on him. It was a weird situation, and I felt kind of like, you're going to give me copies of my album? Like, that's just kind of weird. Yeah. Thanks for my music. I'll take these on tour. Yeah.
When was that? Was that before the band came
It was like
back?
it was like 2017, 2018.
Right, okay, I'm seeing here. It's a 2018 thing. Which is kind of around the time, 2019 was Chimerical Reality, right? So
late 2019, yeah.
Were you like already toying with the idea of bringing the band back at that point?
When the vinyl dropped?
Yeah, like when that whole thing kind of started.
So, I mean, oddly enough, in like 2013, Billy and I wrote a bunch of music with a good friend, Ian, and we had Nick from Molotov do vocals on it.
He specifically asked for you to talk about this on Instagram.
Oh, Nick did?
Yeah.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that on our Instagram, or
no, on we posted about the show on Monday, and he replied. He left a comment on it saying, "Let me pull it up just to not invent words here." He asked him about the songs we did. That's all he said.
Yeah. So Nick is hands down one of my favorite vocalists of all time. Mm-hmm. Molotov gets all the credit they deserve, but I think Nick is on a whole different level. And I tried to get him to be the vocalist of In Hellfall with when I originally brought it back. And every time we've switched vocalists, I've messaged him like, "Hey, now's the time. Get on board. Let's do this. Let's go." And I've been trying to get him for it feels like obviously over a decade now. So he did the tracks. He did fantastic. But it wasn't In Hellfall with, right? It was just kind of like Billy and I writing like melodic death metal in a weird proggy way. And then we ended Nick. It was like 2012 and 2013, something like that. And it just kind of fizzled out. I think he put him out on like SoundCloud or something, just to have it out there.
Okay.
But he did fantastic on him. It was super cool.
Was it through a different name or?
I think he did it as like
Or like on his personal
demo
kinda...
tracks or something. It was like his personal SoundCloud. Yeah. It was like In Hellfall with demo tracks, and we were at that point in time thinking about spinning it back up as In Hellfall with him on vocals. And then it didn't work because
that would
Billy
have been something else. That would have been fucking awesome.
Billy wasn't feeling it, He didn't want to do deathcore again and the whole nine, and you're not going to make someone do something they don't want to do. So that kind of fizzled out. And then, like I said, I've been trying to get him ever since. But we've never like hung out. We've played shows together and we've like been around each other. But I feel like Nick and I are like, it's like weird because we're friends, but we're not friends. Like we've never met to become friends, but hopefully one day we get to hang out and have a beer or something. So
yeah, that's the internet for you now,
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, it goes way back now too, right? Because like it's like you've been talking to this guy for 15 years now, never actually hung out in person.
I would probably still fanboy though if I met him, so I'd punish him,
Yeah.
Dude, sign my shirt, dude.
And then join the band. Sign my shirt. In the same sentence.
Hey, can you give me your phone number so I can text you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe to kind of to cap it off, we could maybe talk about, I guess, while we're on the subject of vocalists, you've dealt with a multitude of different vocalists on basic, what is it? The track record's a different vocalist on every album, right? That's kind of what it's ended up being, aside from Domain and Proprio.
Literally, yeah. It's my curse.
How is that for you? Is it kind of like starting from scratch every time? Is it kind of a hassle? I know, the auditions and the vocal contests and all these things. Like it gets the hype up. I'm sure. There's like something happening around every time that kind of happens. But I'm curious from your perspective.
It definitely changes how you present a song, right? How you present yourself as a band. And there's so much more to it than just adding a vocalist and having a different sound on the album. You're pulling another person into the mix, another personality, a friendship. You're creating a friendship, right? Especially my last three vocalists, obviously, are with Hahn, who we have now, and then the last two vocalists. Like I didn't know any of these guys prior to this, right? So. It wasn't like a traditional friendship, and in some sense, a lot of it is like transaction based, right? So, you deal with each other in a band, and you don't really otherwise, So, I thought that Dan from Crown was pretty much perfect for us. But we're
his
not.
Vocals on the album are fucking phenomenal for what it's worth. He's such a badass fucking vocalist, dude.
Agreed. Yeah. He's a special dude too. He's an amazing guy, a good friend of mine. And I was really sad to get that message, with him saying, "Hey, with Crown going this way, I've got to, commit full time." And so went the rest of the guys, obviously. So, they didn't write too much on Quietus. Obviously, Byron had his influence on drums, and Dan did vocals. So it wasn't like we had Crown Magnetar writing our album for us or something. But at the same time, I felt like it was a perfect fit. But we weren't going to the level that they wanted to go to, and Crown was obviously capable of doing so.
Well,
More power to
Crown
him.
also did like dramatically pick up during that time, right? Like because
for
Crown
sure,
had some semblance of popularity, but they really kind of like shot up kind of around that same time. Like to me it kind of like made sense when that announcement was made. Seeing their trajectory like as of late, right? And it's even now it's kind of crazy to see how much they've grown even since then, right? Like
yeah, for sure.
they're doing it big.
Much,
it's cool. It's
much
really
deserved
cool to see.
too.
Yeah.
They're all amazing people. So I haven't been like that good of friends with people in a long time, and Byron especially, definitely one of my best friends. So we don't talk as much anymore, obviously, with him living in Colorado and me in Michigan and everything that goes on, right? But if we ever bump into each other, we're probably gonna hug for 10 minutes straight, and then get dinner or something. So but yeah, we got Pond now. Pond brings a whole different flavor to the table.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for some of Pond's style, for sure. But I love it. I mean,
he does a bit of that hardcore style more than the previous ones, I find.
For sure, yeah. And I felt like that brought a whole different flavor, right? Especially to our hardcore sound, right? And it actually made it feel kind of hardcore. So I feel like for the first time in a long time, we actually kind of have an actual hardcore influence for the band. And moving forward, we've talked about Daniel and I both kind of adding in our vocal style too, and expanding it even further. So with Pond's brutal sounds and his hardcore sound and everything, Daniel and I kind of mixing it in to kind of bring back the more of the original sound. I think it's going to be a good formula moving forward. So
that's super cool. Are you guys already writing some new music? What's going on moving forward?
We definitely slowed down, and with our business style, I guess you'd call it, we were talking about just writing a bunch and then just releasing a single at a time. Sure. Versus like albums, you know what I mean? So once you have like 6 or 7 tracks ready, just kind of drop one per month to kind of keep things going, right? And then maybe after a year, you kind of release it as an album, just so everybody can have it on
it or whatever. But like
exactly,
singles type thing, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If you look at the modern music industry, that's pretty much how all your rappers do it. That's pretty much how all your rock bands are doing it. And it kind of keeps the traction going as far as like your Spotify numbers, because that's kind of like the double-edged sword with Spotify. Like you drop an album every 2 years, and for the first 6 months after the album, you're floating at 50,000 listeners or more, and then for the second year, you're like 30,000, and it kind of dwindles off, right? The algorithm does. So unless you're a content whiz, which I am not, I am a full-time working father. That's just not my bag, you know what I mean? So I think the smarter move, like PJ from Hollowed, is kind of put into our heads is a single at a time and kind of go from there. But
right, you already have some backed up too, so there's not like the pressure also of because that would be the other thing. Like if you have to write a song every single month, that'd be like a whole other thing. But if you've got stuff in the tank, like cool, you can kind of
like South Park on it for writing the episode every week or something.
Yeah, that's it.
That would be cool, a cool challenge for sure. And it would if we're truly talented, I suppose we could pull it off. But
right, and had no job, that has to be your full kids.
Yeah. If you're ready to put 80 hours into the studio every week to write a new track, right? So. I probably get maybe an hour or 2 a week to sit down and write or try to record it, and it's extremely difficult to do. But that's why, like, when we do release something, it's truly the fruit of our labors, So
No, but
I mean,
it's
you guys could-
it's
oh, go for
smart because most like that's even what I'm doing personally. I have a like a deathcore project, and it's just like it's an EP, but it's just like I'm building it as I go along. It's like I'm releasing a song, it's a part of it, and I just like build it like that. Because the thing is, unless you're a band with like multiple drops and videos and whatever, like you have plenty of content and you're touring and all that. If you don't have that and you only do music, it doesn't make sense to do one drop and then you have nothing to announce. It would be like, okay, here's 12 songs. And then for like 10 months, there's just nothing. It's just like, hey, did you hear?
Years. And that's the hard part.
I think it'd be different if we were the type of music that goes on the radio, right? So where you have the radio constantly forcing you down into people's ears, right? But that industry is pretty much long gone, and anybody who's going to blow up now, even like Spirit Box and or did I say that? Yeah, Sleep Token and Spirit Box, right? Even bands like that, right? I mean, they're getting on radio, but it's a few and far between, and that's more like your Sirius XM and things like that, right? So,
but even them, they're not picking up on. They're not getting traction on songs that are already released on an album, right?
Right.
It's all the pre-release singles and or the standalone singles that they do between albums, and a lot of these albums now are just EPs. They're shorter in nature because you can why not drop 2 EPs instead of one full length? It's everything's going in that direction, and it's to your point. I think that's kind of just where we're at in music and people's attention spans, once it's out, it's out. There's no point in putting out a music video for a song that's already on an album that's already dropped. Like it has to be like a hot new thing that someone's never heard of before. So
you kind of have to Amazon Prime your music and have it ready to go and delivered the next day. And But guys, I gotta wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But dude, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll have to keep in touch. I'm excited for whatever you guys cook up next, whenever it may be. We'll be here for it. But
for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, my man.
Thanks. Man.
Yeah, of course, and thanks to everybody in the chat for joining us. And I did see your questions and stuff, and thanks to the guy who got the artwork tattooed. Thank you.
That's badass. Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, have a great rest of your night, my man.
You too, guys. Talk to you soon.
Take care, man.